You have quite a story. Tell me how you ended up in LA County Jail.
Okay. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. So I was a junior going into my senior year, and I was on the executive board of my fraternity. And tragically, one of our pledges passed away drinking at one of our events. So what that led to was in an investigation, which led to eventually all 9 of us on the executive board being charged with third-degree felonies for hazing, which then led to a very long court case. So a lot of things happened leading up to LA County Jail, which I'm sure we'll get into. But essentially, I was out in California fighting the case, just trying to move forward with my life. And at the time, I was wearing a SCRAM monitor that tested positive for alcohol. So that had a false positive while I was living out there. And I actually ended up living out there all of 2019 with a warrant out for my arrest in Florida. And I was leaving work one day and got to my car, and 5 U.S. Marshals, actually 4, in undercover cop cars, like your Dodge Chargers, your Challengers, just like out of a movie, just cornered me and just zoom, zoom, zoom right when I got to my door. And guys with vests got out pointing guns at me. I was in a suit, and yeah, they took me in and they were acting out on the warrant. So took me into LA County Jail, and yeah.
It's a long story
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to get into.
Yep.
I know we're kind of starting pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Explain what LA County Jail is like. Walk me through booking, how are you separated, living quarters, kind of describe what it's like.
Yeah, LA County Jail, just a little bit of background too, is one of the most feared jail systems in the United States of America, being that LA County, or LA, is the gang capital of the world. So when you think of your Bloods, your Crips, big gangs that are known worldwide, they reside there. And so it is a massive jail system. They have multiple different facilities. And so when I was originally picked up being acted on the warrant, or when the warrant was being acted on, I got taken to a substation originally. Now, this wasn't my first time in jail due to other parts of this case or other parts of this story. So when I got to the substation, it just seemed like a regular jail. I thought I was at LA County. I didn't even know what a substation was. And so when I got there, unfortunately, it was a Thursday, and I didn't get in to go to court on that Friday. So I had to stay in the substation the entire weekend. And we were in this really big room. There's probably like 20 bed spaces in one massive room. And unfortunately, I didn't get one of those bed spaces, so my mat was on the floor for the first bit of it until some people left and went to court. And then I got a bed. But, 48 to 72 hours in a place where you're not getting out or you're not leaving, you start to talk to people. People start to talk to others. And I was talking to some people, and I also kind of stood out like a sore thumb in there. I was wearing a suit and tie and dress shoes. So people were kind of looking like, what is this dude doing here? Which attracted a lot of people to me to ask questions. And I would tell them my case, or we would talk about what was going on and stuff like that. And I just remember, and I already knew at this point that, given certain circumstances, I wasn't getting out anytime soon. And One of the guys, I just remember him saying, he's just like, I pray to God that you don't have to go to LA County Jail. And I was a little taken back. I was a little confused. I was like, what do you mean? Like, we're already here, aren't we? And that's not the case. So Monday morning came around. I had my court case. I got woken up at like 3 a.m. to get down to court by like 5 or 6. And when we got to court, it's like you go in the back way, I guess, or the underground way. And you go into these big, massive holding cells that are just the most disgusting things that you could possibly imagine. They don't look like they've been cleaned since they were built. And you're just waiting all day for your court, like for your time, which is probably going to last like 2 to 3 minutes. And unfortunately, mine was towards the end of the day. But then we went through it. I knew that I was going to end up getting booked into LA County Jail. And this process was one of the hardest parts of my life. I would say there's a chapter in my book called The Worst 48 Hours of My Life. And it was the booking process in LA County Jail. So when we got over there, it's already nighttime. We went through security. We dropped all of our stuff off. And then we got into another holding cell. And they literally had us strip butt naked. So I'm in a bunch of rooms with a bunch of guys that I don't know, stripped down to everything. We put all of our belongings in a bag. One guy looked over to me and he's like, yo, if you have anything nice, shoes, clothes, whatever it is, like try to hide them because cops will steal stuff. Like you will get released and you won't have your pair of Nikes or your Jordans or anything like that. They'll just take them. So I tried to do that given that I was in pretty nice clothes. But luckily I was like, I'm only 5'6". Maybe they don't fit into any of my stuff. But yeah, butt ass naked, walking in a line into these massive showers. We all showered. We got clothed. And from my experience, once you're in your clothes, you just get assigned to your dorm. And it's maybe a few hour process. But once we were clothed, we went into one holding cell. And we were packed in there like sardines. Not very fun. There's like so many people in there and there was not a lot of airflow. So our windows started to like fog up. And one of the guys literally just started banging on the door super hard to try and get a guard to be like, open up like the little peephole where you can put stuff in or hand stuff in. And so he did that. But we just waited in there for a long time, and then we got moved to another place, waited for a long time. We had to go through medical clearance, and it was just hours and hours, and they don't really put clocks in there. So that's part of like the really hard part is you have no idea what time it is, and you have no concept of time. There's no windows. There's no access to see like, is it light outside? Is it not? But eventually we finally got to my housing about 2 days later. So I didn't really sleep at all that entire process because it was freezing cold in there. And it was just extremely uncomfortable. There's really nowhere to lay down. I remember we were getting to like into day 2. And I was just like delirious at this point. I really like felt like I was starting to hallucinate. Like I would look at the wall and it would look like it was kind of moving. And I was just like, screw it. I got it. I got to lay down. I got to shut my eyes. And so I just succumbed and surrendered and was just like, I'm just going to lay on the floor. And when I laid on the floor, I just remember just smelling the most awful smell in the world. And I'm just like, what is that? And it literally, I just look over and just piss all over the floor. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, this might be like one of the lowest points in my life right now. But yeah, we eventually got booked into LA County. I got to my dorm and I was greeted by a white representative. So one thing that I learned throughout this process is LA County is a county jail, but it's ran like prisons. And so when you are in prison, you stick to your race. and they have a set of rules that are in place by the inmates to try and keep peace within the jail. Because as you can imagine, you're starting to mix white people or, whites that don't like blacks or vice versa, or stuff like that. And so there is like a set of unwritten rules, if you will. And so when I got in, he greeted me and he just ran me through all the rules. He's like, these are the white people tables. Those are the black people tables. We have an alliance with the homies. These are our phones. Those are the black phones. We don't eat with black people. We don't share food with black people. We don't work out with them. And I was just sitting there like, what is going on? Like, I thought I teleported back into where like the times where we were segregated. And I'm just trying to remember everything because I'm like, I do not want to break any of these rules. They seem pretty serious. But yeah, he just showed me around. And I remember after 48 hours of not really sleeping at all and just going through this grueling process of waiting, moving to a new holding cell, getting moved to another one, thinking that you're getting housed just to be moved to another holding cell, finally getting to a dorm. It's probably like 55, 60 degrees in there, and I'm so cold. I get to my bed, and they don't have enough mats. So my first night in LA County Jail, I find my bed, and I just slept on a freezing cold sheet of metal. And yeah, it's not a fun process.
I've thought of several questions to ask. I don't even know what order to start, but you noted what clothing were you provided? Let's start there.
Yeah,
what were you wearing?
Yeah, just your typical like jumpsuit. Like it was general population is blue in LA County. So it was just like, I don't know, probably your most uncomfortable cotton that you could wear. You get 2 pairs of underwear, you get pants. They gave you socks. 2 pairs of socks, luckily, because the first night I was so cold, I literally ripped one of my pairs and put them as sleeves because it was so cold. And like the blankets they gave us were paper thin. So yeah.
What are you wearing for shoes?
Shoes, they're like kind of like shower shoes, if you will. They're like slides or sandals.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can wear them in the shower.
For the first 48, were you in cuffs that whole time?
No. Luckily, I was. That's like when we took the shower in the beginning, like that massive big group shower. They gave us clothes before that. So like when we had to undress all of our like work clothes, put those in a bag. Then that's when we were naked going to that shower. But on the way, they like handed us all of our stuff. That way, when we got out of the shower, we can close ourselves in those in the jumpsuit. And then I was in that the entire process.
And you weren't cuffed after that?
No.
No. So you guys were in that giant room. Just how many people would you guess? Dozens, 100?
Depends which holding cell it was. Like some of the holding cells were smaller and it would be like 15 to 20 of us, but like 8 would have probably been comfortable. So you're just like
small room.
Yeah, you're not trying to really touch. You don't want to. You have no idea who these people are. Like,
were other people falling asleep before you?
Yeah. I mean,
they may have been there before.
Yeah.
Knew the process.
Yeah.
So you eventually passed out. How were you woken up?
Woken up in
that
like once I was housed
in that waiting room. You fell asleep. What happened? How'd they get you up?
Oh yeah, I mean it was like a very light sleep. So anyway, I mean it's not a very pleasant knock on the door though. Usually a flashlight on some metal is not a great way to be woken up.
Yeah, I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you referred to it as a dorm more than once.
Mm-hmm.
Do they call it a dorm?
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, so there's different facilities have different housing. Like you could be in cells, you can be in a dorm.
Explain the difference. What is the difference?
Yeah, so a cell is what you would imagine, right? Like what you see maybe in the movies. It's like a very small space, maybe 2 bunks. You got a cellmate, you got the door, and it's a very small space. You might have like a sink and a toilet, which I've experienced that as well. And the other times that I've had to do time, and the dorm is so much better.
Explain the dorm. What's that?
So the dorm is almost like military style, like bunk style. So you have this big open area. You walk in, you got tables, usually a TV, and a little bit of area to like work out. We had like red tape boxes on the floor, and that's like a workout area, if you will, if you want to do some push-ups. There was a pull-up bar, which was really nice. And not in all the dorms though. In some of the dorms, they don't have pull-up bars, and I actually had to like, some of the inmates had these makeshift pull-up grips that they would put on the edge of the stairs. And then they had like shoelaces, and you would slide those. It was like old textbooks rolled up and tied up so they can create a grip. But the dorm was 2 stories, and they had a couple bathrooms. They had individual showers. So like showers were on a kind of like a first come, first serve thing. And if you wanted to get in line, you would just try and like figure out who was up next and be like, yo, there's like an honor system to it. I got after you. But then the racks were 3-person racks. So you had a bottom, a middle, and a top. And then they were just lined up at the end, like upstairs pushed against the wall, and then downstairs pushed against the wall.
Were you provided a specific one, or you just walked up to one of them? Is this free and you take it?
Yeah. So that's, you're assigned in the system as having a bunk, but in general population, they tried their best to bunk you near like your own race, or at least who, like if you're a white, around like some homies, which is more of like the Spanish, like Mexican like race. And then, you know, they had to like separate, for example, like downstairs on one side, the Crips lived with the Crips, and then there was like the homies and the whites in the middle of the Bloods on the other. So like they didn't want those guys being right next to each other. But I had an assignment, or a assigned bed, but they did this thing called G riding. So they would switch up, the inmates would switch up the beds based off of how they wanted it to go in the dorm. But during count time, like wristband count, so that's when there's 3 times a day, cops would come by and like make sure you had to get on your bed. Everyone had to be quiet. The first 2, one in the morning and one in the middle of the day, were pretty like simple. They just come and count. The wristband count at night was a very serious one. So if you were on a bunk that you were not supposed to be on, you had to roll up all of your stuff and like put it to the edge of the bed, and then you would go to yours up there, and you'd switch, and then after that's done, you'd like go back to where you're supposed to go. But that was a sketchy thing for me, because apparently one of the bed that I was supposed to be on in general population, the dude was hiding a shank, and that it was like carved out, like they carved the metal out of the bed somehow. And they told me, like one of the guys told me that like before like one of my first nights in there, I'm, you know, if that gets found when I'm there, like that's going to fall on me. So I was always, for lack of better term, shitting bricks every count. I'm just like, please let me get by this and like have them not find anything. Cause some cops would go in and like go in the cut and like in between the bunks and like really look for stuff. And then others were just like a little bit more nonchalant about it. But yeah, I mean, anything that you really just had to pray that whoever set up their stuff before you switched beds did a good job of doing so.
Yeah, didn't plant something.
Yeah.
How did you describe the person? Was it a representative, you said?
Yeah.
Describe what that means. That was another inmate, and describe how that works.
That's a good question. I would say like they're mostly gang affiliated, and a lot of the people that were coming in and out of there are gang affiliated or homeless, unfortunately. So typically it would probably be someone that's higher up in whatever gang they were in.
They're assigned to give the introduction to the person coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And describe how many people were in the dorm.
Yeah, it's a great question. It was about 66 was like max capacity in a dorm. And we sat on like a block. So the way that it was designed is, picture like a cul-de-sac, right? You have 1 dorm, 2 dorms, 3 dorms. And then those dorms have massive bars that you can like see in and out of. And the cops were actually outside of the dorm with a view of like all three. So different from other places that I've been where like the cop is actually inside the dorm. You know, they had a saying in there that like the cops don't run the jail, the inmates do. The cops are just there to make sure no one dies in LA.
You can attest?
Yeah.
Yeah. So could you reiterate the rules? So in those 66 people, was it all sorts of people and then the inmates grouped you guys up? Or was it 66 of people like you and another one was 66 of other people? Describe that a little bit more.
Yeah. So because of the charge that I had, there's a body being on my charge, I was housed in a super maximum security facility in LA County. So everybody, you get a level of your charge, 1 through 10, 10 being the worst. Mine was a 7. So everyone that I was housed in was like attempted murder cases or murder cases or very violent cases. So that was like the type of people that were in there. But you had your whites, your Latinos, and maybe like middle European, Eastern European is probably a better term for that, and then blacks, and then your Asians. So like the blacks and the Asians kind of stuck together, and then the Eastern Europeans, the Latinos, and the whites kind of had like a little alliance. The whites were a minority in jail, so like there would probably be, for a rough estimate, maybe like 5 to 10 whites per dorm, probably like 30 to 40, I don't know, maybe like 20 to 30 Latinos, and then, no, actually 30 to 40, or 30, I would say 30 Latinos, 5 to 10 whites, and then like 15 to 20 blacks. That's kind of how it broken down. Like, I moved around throughout a couple dorms, just because sometimes they move you around for whatever reason, and it was pretty constant in that ratio, I would say.
Consistent. So how long did you spend in LA County Jail?
LA County Jail was 62 days. Yep. But I went in there not knowing how long I was going to be in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll backtrack a little bit. Explain a little bit about why you went to California and like kind of what led up to getting to that position.
Yeah, so the reason why I went out to California in the first place was because I had a buddy of mine. He was like a big brother to me in college. And he was the reason why I joined the fraternity that I joined. Because I went into not wanting to join a fraternity whatsoever. And he kind of changed my mind on that. He kind of took me under under his wing, and also provided a different perspective. I had this like preconceived notion of like what fraternity's like. I thought, you know, they were all the same and whatnot. And he showed me that they're not all the same. And so, and then I had a great experience throughout it. You know, it was awesome. And I really looked up to this friend. He's always been a mentor, role model, big brother figure to me, and still is. I actually just texted him the other day, just like thinking of him. You know, we don't keep in touch as often as not, but life gets busy. But he graduated a year before me. He also had the same role that I had on exec, so he was kind of getting me ready for that as well. And he moved out to California to get into the solar industry, door to door, and it was a booming industry out there. And he was doing really, really well. So he started to think of people that would also do really well. He was building a team out there. And I was gearing up to get out there, but I was also like dealing with stuff with this case at the same time. And then certain things happened, and I didn't think maybe that they would hire me still or whatnot. But I reached out to him after some things took place, and he was still more than happy to give me a shot as long as I could move out there. And at the time, I had to get permission from the judge to move out there because of my pretrial restrictions. I was wearing a SCRAM monitor, which tests for alcohol 24/7. and it had a little home base that connected to my Wi-Fi and just read every 24 hours. So I just had to be in the vicinity of it at a certain time. And then I can, I'm free to move on and do what I needed to do throughout the day. And then as long as I was back there, same time for it to read, or even if I missed the reading, I can always wake it up with like a magnet. But yeah, they allowed me to move out to California, and I got out in California and started my career in solar because I was just simply trying to move on with my life with everything that was kind of going on.
Yeah, you're doing your best. So explain, how does that work if you're in trial? How do you ask permission or petition to have a job or move? Explain that process.
Yeah, ask your lawyer. I was fortunate enough to have private representation, and I think if I wasn't able to do that, I probably would have just pleaded guilty in the very beginning. But we were able to have private representation, so he was my voice for everything. So it was more just conversations with him, seeing what's possible, and then he went to the judge and got permission and everything like that.
Yeah, relying on your lawyer as a voice of, representation. And hopefully they know what they're doing, right?
Yeah, and you want to be very, very careful with what you say and how you say it when it comes to court and law. So
Yeah.
it can really get turned and twisted on
Definitely.
you.
Describe a little bit more about your time in LA. I'm sure you met a bunch of people, and you noted you had 5 really impactful hugs before you left. So
Hmm.
explain that and explain why you got out of LA. Why were you there? And then they let you out. Explain that.
Yeah. So originally, when I moved out to California, I moved to San Francisco and more specifically, Walnut Creek, which is right outside of that. And we were there for a year, and the solar thing didn't really work out for me or my roommate. But when our lease was up, I had a warrant out for my arrest in Florida, so couldn't go home. I was kind of stuck out there. And the whole play with that is that we felt like we had a really strong case to fight for my innocence. So I was fighting the case and fighting the charge, and we were just waiting for trial, which was taking a really, really long time to get to. And so since I couldn't go home, and San Francisco was like, it was nice, but it's a little cold for me. Like, even every time we wanted to go into the city, especially being from Florida, every time we wanted to go into the city, even if it was summer, like California has a lot of microclimates. So it would be like 96 degrees in Walnut Creek. And we're like, let's go to the beach. So we'd drive over to the beach and it'd be like 60 degrees and cloudy. And I'm like, that's not going to cut it for me because I'm cool with it being cold in the winter. But if it's cold during the summertime, like that's just not going to work out. So we were like, let's try out LA. So we moved down to LA and kind of was like getting our stuff situated there. Obviously, that's when the warrant was acted on and I got caught up there. But there was LA County is where the book was born, or the inspiration for the book was born. And yeah, I struggled a lot in San Francisco. It was probably the hardest time of my life. I really battled depression. I battled severe anxiety, and no one really saw it because I moved across the country away from all my friends and family. And really the only person that did see it firsthand was my roommate, who is now one of my best friends. And towards the end of San Francisco, and like when we decided to move to LA, is when I, after like 2 years of battling depression and anxiety, I pulled myself out of it simply because I just woke up one day and I was just like, man, I can't keep living like this. I'm so unmotivated. Feel like I weigh 800 pounds every time I wake up. After a full 8 hours of sleep, or some nights you get in bed at 10 p.m. and I can't shut off my brain and I'm up till 3 a.m. and I got to be at work at 6. So it was just like, it was like that for a long time. And I also noticed like every time I hopped on a phone call with like a family member or a friend, like catching up with them, it was just such victim mindset. It was just like, why me? Like, poor me. Feeling really sorry for myself. I was super negative, which was like never a thing growing up. I was always really positive. I always had people seek me out and kind of ask me like, hey, why are you so happy? How are you so happy? And so all of this stuff was really foreign to me. But eventually I had a couple breaking points. I had a couple low points that kind of broke me and almost opened up like what needed to be opened up, or helped me release what needed to be released that I was just holding on to for so long. And I was able to make a really good turn halfway through, or like right before we were moving to Los Angeles, where I kind of just shifted my perspective on everything that was happening to me. And it really started to like, just from a decision, I just realized that a lot of the things that were happening to me were outside of my control. And I was kind of learning that to let go of all the things that I can't control. And it really allowed me to focus my energy on the things that could. And then I started like doing a lot of personal development. I started pouring into myself. I started practicing gratitude. I really started to change a lot of things internally. And so my mindset going into, by doing that, I started to learn so much from all the things that were causing me so much pain, and the things that I was going through that were really tough. And so going into LA County, thankfully, I was in one of the best mind states that I had been in a really long time. And I was starting to see everything as like an opportunity for growth and for learning, because I had started to lay a little bit of a foundation for the few months going into it. And I feel like when you start to see like progress from the stuff that you're doing, it almost makes you want to do more of it. And so when I went into LA County, one of the things that I learned was just to like open up my heart to the things that were causing me pain. Even though it's a difficult thing to do, I almost view it as like a treasure chest. And like when you open it up, you unlock so much little gold nuggets from like the things that are actually like the adversity that you go through. And when I really opened up myself to that, I was like, okay, I started seeing all this stuff. So I'm like, dude, you need to just be more open. Like closed hearts, closed minds, they close opportunities. Open hearts, open opportunities. And I was really seeing that firsthand. So when I got into LA County, I just told myself, when I was sitting in the substation, sitting in the holding cell of a substation, I was like, listen, this situation right now is completely out of control. So you have two options. You can either resist this, you can resist your present moment and suffer, or you can be open to it and just see what can come of it. I had no idea when I was going to get out. So I just told myself, listen, just use this time to try and become the best version of yourself, because you'll never have as much time to yourself as sitting in a jail cell or being in jail. So, and I told myself, I'm going to stay open. Obviously, I'm scared to death. Like, I have no idea what to expect. And, you only hear certain things, and you have certain people telling you they pray to God that you don't go to LA County jail. So I'm very scared, but at the same time, I'm like, listen, man, like you've opened up your heart recently and great things have been happening from that. And, a couple months before that, I really learned how to love myself, I felt like, for the first time. And I was really seeing like the power that love had in my life, from stemming within and then seeing how it affected everything out. And so I told myself, like, just be open to everyone in there, don't close people off. So when people would come up to me, I wouldn't try and like, avoid them or keep closed off to them. I would just take it as an opportunity to stop whatever I was doing and just see what would come of it. And one thing that I learned in there is misery loves company. There's a lot of miserable people in jail, as you can imagine. You're meeting people in most likely their lowest point in their life. And but I all I wanted to do was talk, really. And also too, I feel like when you really focus on yourself and you're vibrating at a high frequency, especially in a very low frequency place, like you attract a lot of people. People are kind of curious from like, why is that? And so I did find that I had no intention of like talking to everybody in there, but a lot of people wanted to talk to me. So I just talked to them and I listened to them. And I feel like I was probably one of the first people to listen to them like in years or ever. And they really opened up to me. They told me their stories, which were like just some of the most incredible stories I've ever heard in not the most positive way. Like, and maybe incredible is like a not the right word to use for it, but
Impactful.
impactful, just eye opening. Like I heard some of these stories from some people that just made me like, realize that whatever I'm going through doesn't even compare to what some of these people have to go through. And B, it just allowed, like they allowed them to open up and like be pretty vulnerable with me. And so when they were done, and I just listened to listen, I didn't even listen to offer anything. I just was there to like be curious and talk with them and see where it went. And then, at the end of their stories, it kind of opened up an opportunity for me to share mine with them. And I feel like when we listen first, and listen to understand, not just respond to people, they're a little bit more open for what you have to say as well. And so I told my story and everything that I was learning from it. So when I was about to leave, I had 5 grown men come up to me and thank me for everything that I did for them. And they gave me these massive hugs. And it was just one of the most fulfilling feelings that I've ever had in my life. And it all stemmed from simply just sharing my story and what I was learning from it. And it made me think in that moment that if my story could have that kind of impact on people, then I would be doing a disservice not telling the story and kind of keeping this to myself. So right then and there, I was extremely inspired. And I feel like I found what my purpose would be in life. And I always knew that I wanted to do really big things. And I always knew that I wanted to help people. I've always had a big heart growing up. You know, I don't know if it's just genetics, if it's something that was instilled with me. My dad always taught me, and mom, always give more than you receive, give more than you receive. So I was always just wanting to help people. I feel like I'm a huge empath. I feel for a lot of people as well. And I just want everyone to be happy. So I was really inspired then to just share my story with others in hopes that it can help other people, you know, want to be better, but also just like enjoy the life that we have, you know. Like I feel like there's a lot of people out there suffering, and I suffered for a really long time, but I also learned how to not suffer anymore, even when things weren't going my way, or even when I was feeling a lot of pain. I think suffering is a choice, pain is inevitable.
I agree. So you said vibrating at a higher frequency in a
Hmm.
low frequency place.
Hmm.
I had a couple questions. Did that cause a bad target on your back? Did that make you a threat in some type of way?
That's a great question, because I think like in a place like that, if you're almost a little bit too cheerful or a little bit too much, people would want to take that down. But I had more of like a really stoic approach to it. I think internally I was doing well, and it's such a weird thing. Like when I look back on this experience in LA County Jail, it's like one of the most incredible experiences that I never want to have again, because of how much I learned for it. It changed my life. It changed my complete perspective on things because, you know, I grew up very fortunate, and I grew up in, you know, almost a little bit of a bubble to what happens out there for a lot of people in the world, maybe majority, if it's safe to say. And I had these assumptions or preconceived notions of like why maybe they lived those lives or whatever. And what I realized is like a lot of people in there, man, they were born into a situation where they were not loved by their parents, or their parents were non-existent, or their mom was a drug addict and their dad was in jail the whole life, or vice versa. And I listened to these stories, and really the main theme that I found in a lot of these stories is, man, such a lack of love in their life, whether it's from other people at a young age or for themselves, which is probably a domino effect of not receiving it when they're little. And it just leads you down a different path versus like, I'm sitting in a similar situation as them, or I'm in the same place physically, but I'm viewing it as a positive. I'm looking to grow from this. My perspective is completely changed, but I also received so much love and support growing up. And that's really where a lot of the inspiration was, is to try and help people that didn't have the love and support that I had growing up, and like giving them maybe some tools that they don't have, or just like some knowledge, or maybe just offering a different perspective on the things that they're going through, and really like teaching people to like love themselves, because I really feel strongly that if you love yourself, like you can accomplish anything no matter what the circumstances are.
They were set up for failure, right?
Yeah.
And not always by their choice,
All
right?
right.
Kind of by design.
Mm-hmm.
You come to the situation, and this is where they're at, right?
Yeah.
Um, Difficult. So you noted a lot of people opened up to you, and you were willing to listen, which is a unique situation. You weren't talking first. It seems like people came to you, right, to
Mm-hmm.
talk. When they would open up, how would they open up? Would they open up why they were there, or was it unrelated and they were just talking about their life?
I would say a little bit of both. Like, depends on the person, right? Some people take a little bit more time to warm up to other people than others. But like I said, like misery loves company. And when you're in a place like that, like all you have is time. Talking helps you get through it. And people like to talk about themselves and talk about their story. And the sad thing is that not a lot of people want to listen to them. So I think when I was like engaged and giving them attention, it definitely like fueled the fire a little bit, and they would want to talk more and open up more, and go deeper and stuff, and share things that maybe they wouldn't share with everyone.
Yeah, definitely. When you opened up, what did you feel you had to open up most about? Was it about how you ended up there, or was it unrelated?
I think along my journey early on in this like 4-year period that the book is written about, I really learned how strong vulnerability is. And I think vulnerability could be seen by a lot as a weakness, but I found that it was a huge strength, because in order to learn and grow and get better, even from like the mistakes that we make, and that's another thing, I was very vulnerable about the mistakes I made. A lot of people like to just talk about the things that they do well, but I was okay with sharing like the wrongs that I did. And I think when you do that, people are like, okay, cool, I'm not the only one that messed up or made a mistake. And um so yeah, I think me sharing all of the story, right? I think with this story and with my book, it could have been really easy to just stay on the high horse the whole time. But I left it all out there. I mean, I'm by no means anywhere near close to perfect, and I'm okay with that. And I learned to love the imperfections about me, because that's what makes me me, and that's what gives us opportunities to learn, grow, and get better. And so I think just my vulnerability, like when I was telling my story of like, hey, I messed up here, this was the biggest mistake of my life, this mistake is why I really ultimately why I'm here, and taking a lot of accountability for decisions that I made. um I think that allows people to be like, open up and be real.
Describe how people were listening to you Describe, they may not have been giving you answers. Describe what it was like just to be listened to.
Yeah. So I think like that was a huge part of it. Like just being able to talk to people. And I think like a lot of people out there don't talk. And that's where they hold in a lot of stuff and they don't release it. And we're energetic beings. So if energy is not constantly flowing through us, whether it's a negative emotion, whether it's a positive emotion, it's going to stay there until something happens. And it's almost like I like to view it as like a dam being broken. And that happened to me sometimes. For a long time when I was depressed and I was going through really tough times, I wasn't necessarily talking about it. And I was just holding on to emotions that should have just been released. And that's a part of like being present. And the more we can practice being present, because if you're just holding on to things in the past or waiting for something to happen in the future, you're not going to be where your feet are. You're not going to be present. And that's where we can get these massive blockages built up. And one of the most therapeutic things that I ever did, which I didn't even know, because at the beginning of this, I wrote this book to help others. But when I look back on it, this probably helped me more than I could have ever imagined, because I was releasing everything that I was going through and I wasn't holding on to it, which allowed space and energy for other better emotions and better things to come in. Because again, like going back to what I said about open hearts, open opportunities, closed hearts, closed doors, or you can miss out on so much stuff when you're closed out. But like, I believe that opportunities are endless. There's an abundance, that they're infinite. But if we are not like practicing things, like working on ourselves to learn how to regulate our emotions and work through things, even when they're maybe a little uncomfortable to work through, then we're going to just miss out on so many cool things. Like life is just full of amazing opportunities, people to meet, things to do. And so I feel like when just like them listening to me and me being able to share it, it made me realize how powerful the story was. Imagine if no one wanted to listen to my story in there. I don't have the impact on the people that I did. And then no book is ever written and who knows where I'm at, you know? So yeah, I think that would be the answer to that question.
Sure.
Mhm.
You noted before getting booked and picked up by US Marshals and going to LA County Jail, you noted you were on the upswing. You were practicing gratitude and you were just feeling better. Where did that come from? Were you working with someone? Where'd you learn of that? Where'd you come up with that idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was an instance in LA. I had moved to LA and I rekindled a friendship. And we never were like anything exclusive, like boyfriend or girlfriend, but we hung out a lot at school. And she was amazing. I was just never ready for a relationship in college. And so like things kind of fizzled out, and but when I moved to LA, she was there, and I'd just been living alone or with my roommate for like the last year plus. And so it was awesome to have like a familiar face in somewhere where, you don't really know people. So we started hanging out a bunch, and I was actually getting ready to ask her to be my girlfriend. But there was this one night where my roommate was visiting family. So I had alone time for the first time in like a year plus. And which I'm a huge advocate on, first off, but we can not get too off track, because a lot of beautiful things can happen when we actually slow down and give ourselves time and space to be with ourselves. And so I had that, but I got really sick, and she would come over and bring me food or whatnot, and then she'd get out because she didn't really want to get sick. But I remember when I was coming. And around this time too, I wasn't really working, and I was again sick, so I had nothing but time all day. And I was not in a really good spot financially at this point in my life. I owed people money. I barely had any money. My dad was probably the reason that I wasn't homeless at this time. And I was also making really poor decisions. that were making me feel even worse about myself. I was like doing these things to kind of escape what I was going through. And so I had so much stuff to do. I had a to-do list and all this stuff in my head. And so because I had a lot of time on my hands, once I started feeling a little bit better, I was like, all right, you need to get all of these things that are living in your head out of your head onto paper. And then you can kind of start to get your life in order, if you will. And so I made a to-do list. I made a debts owed list and a like monthly expense list. And when I wrote this list, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get my shit together. Like I have so much stuff to do. I'm not doing it. I'm avoiding it. And it really overwhelmed me. Like I started getting like super stressed out. And so all I wanted to do, and I started to feel a little bit better. And so all I wanted to do was to see her. I was like, she makes me feel better. Like I would love for her to just come over, hang out. Like this was a good exercise, but like, holy shit. Like this is kind of scary. And I think it was like a Friday night, and she got asked to go to like a Rufus Du Sol concert with one of her friends. And I'm like, okay, I learned from a previous relationship to like not want to like to let people do what they want to do and not be controlling and stuff of that nature. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to be the dude that's going to be like, don't go to the concert, come hang out with me. If she wants to go to the concert with her friend, let her go. But in the back of my mind, I was kind of hoping like maybe she'll come over after the concert's over and like end the night with me kind of thing. She didn't. She was not very responsive. And I just like didn't sleep that night. I was like going crazy, like periodically just like texting her, see if she would answer, like Snapchatting her. And then I went on Snapchat and saw a story and she was with another dude. And then all these thoughts were going in my mind and I'm just like going kind of crazy. And then she finally wakes up the next morning and is like, yo, what the heck is going on? And I was like, well, I'm going to tell her I care about her. So I'm going to share my feelings with her. And I kind of sent her a novel. And she just responded back with such a short response, but it was literally it was a life-changing response for me. And it was so impactful in my life. And it was literally just, hey, Clay, I think we need some time away from each other because you are way too dependent on me for your own happiness. And I was like, wow. I was a little pissed off initially. I was like, F that. I'm alone all the way out, like on the other side of the country. I'm not in a good spot. I'm going through this really difficult time in life right now. Like I have no one out here. All I want is just someone to like be there for me. But I knew that if I just pushed, I would probably push her away even more. So I said, you know what, if she thinks we need space right now, then I'm going to give her the space because I did care about her. And the craziest thing happened, that anger, that frustration, I started to slowly realize it turned into like, oh, she's like 100% right. Like why? Like look at this to-do list. Look at all this money I owe. Look at the negative account I have in my bank account. You know, like why am I even worrying about a girl right now? I couldn't even take her on a date. Like it literally made me realize, why am I not the number one priority in my life right now? How I can't be the number one priority, or I can't take care of her if I don't have my stuff right. So that's when I really, really learned how to like truly, truly love myself. I was like, dude, do you even like love yourself right now? And it was that realization that turned me into making myself the number one priority in my life. So that's where my friend at the time was doing this gratitude challenge on Instagram, where like you post a picture, 3 things you're grateful for. And the best part about it though, is that there was explanations why you were grateful for it. And I think it was November around this time. So like Thanksgiving was like the theme of this thing. And so I just hopped on board with that. And I started practicing my gratitude. I was actually sitting there and thinking why I was grateful for things. Working out has always been a consistent in my life. It's probably been the most consistent thing in my life since I was 15 years old, growing up as an athlete, but more specifically weight training. I've just loved weight training. That's just something that's like a non-negotiable. I'm always going to be doing that. So I created a morning routine where I was getting into like reading like a lot of self-help books, spiritual books, personal development around this time too. So I just developed a routine where I woke up, 3 things that I was grateful for, read 5 to 10 pages, go to the gym or write my to-do list somewhere in there for the day, go to the gym, and then knock out that to-do list throughout the day. And man, practicing gratitude was one of the biggest changes in my life because it really got me thinking and looking at life on like everything that I had and not what I didn't. And that was a major like shift for me just on perspective.
Was learning that lesson from that text harder than other days in jail?
That's such a good question. um oof. It's hard to even compare that because the difficulty there there's some, I guess there's a lot of types of pain, right? But there's pain from you're on the other side of the action, if you will, or maybe it's a chain reaction and you feel pain because of it. Or for example, I was falsely accused of crimes that I didn't commit. That's really painful. But the most painful thing that I've ever experienced is when I'm the reason for my own pain. That's I haven't experienced a pain deeper than when you know you're the reason why you're feeling that way. Like when you can't look at yourself in the mirror, you're kind of disgusted. That's a different level of pain. And that's probably more so of the pain that I felt when she texted that versus like, hey, yeah, LA County Jail is really scary. And it's not a fun place to be by any means. But I was put in there on circumstances that were far outside of my control. So it's a little bit, I guess you could say it's probably less painful than the ones where you know that you're the reason why you're in pain. When you're your own worst enemy, that's a pretty low feeling.
It's crazy, right? I think it's guilt that you're describing. Knowing that you're guilty, like I did this, I deserve this is why it's happening.
Yeah,
right?
Which to your point, I didn't feel when I was falsely accused of crimes I didn't commit. Of course, I feel like that was more like anger, frustration, versus like, yeah, the guilt of that. That's a really, really hard pill to swallow.
So explain LA County getting out, but I guess right before that question, you noted making mistakes. All of us do it. Did you make any mistakes in LA County?
I did not make any mistakes in LA County, I would say. I was on my stuff.
P's and Q's.
Yeah. And that the reason being is because I probably saw someone get the shit beat out of them once every other day. You know, there's a lot of fights, a lot of things are handled like within the race or within like the jail. Like a lot of stuff goes on, right? People, unfortunately, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, but when you're in a place like that, you start to realize why some people are there. The decision making isn't very solid. And you're like, dude, why are you going to do that? You're going to piss this person off. And then the XYZ. But yeah, so I saw a lot of things and I was just like, yep, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to just keep my head down. I'm going to focus on myself and just work on being the best version of myself. I had a nice little routine in there that I did every day and I just stuck to that. And then I left some space for the instances of people wanting to talk and chat and stuff like that. So
could you explain that routine that you had?
Yeah, it was, I mean, we got woken up pretty early for breakfast. So, and this is, 1 month I was in general population. The second month I got moved to a trustee dorm. So those schedules obviously changed and for those that don't know, when you're a trustee in jail, you're working in the jail. Typically you're working to reduce a sentence, but I was unsentenced. So not entirely sure why they moved me there, but I was not mad about it because trustees that are working to reduce a sentence are most likely not going to prison, or they're trying to avoid prison, or they're getting out. So they're not more inclined to do things that will keep them there. It's a little bit less tension in a trustee dorm versus general pop. It's like the wild, wild west. So general population, I woke up for breakfast, and then it was so early, like 4:35 a.m. breakfast call. You're like half asleep. You're like, let me get my breakfast. I'm eating this, put the tray up, I'm going back to bed. And then lunchtime was like 10:30-ish. So that's when like everybody, one of those rules or unwritten rules, if you will, was, you can't sleep your time away. Your body can only sleep so much. So they actually don't let you do that. Even the other inmates, they don't let you try that. On the weekends, you can sleep all you want. But Monday through Friday, they almost keep it like a work day. Not really, but you need to get your workout in. Everybody has to work out. And you just need to be doing something. You need to be up. You want to play games. You want to play cards. You want to watch TV. There's things that you can do to fill your time. Just be doing one of them. And you have your time to nap, like throughout the day if you want, like during the count times and stuff like that. You can catch a quick nap. But really mine just revolved around food time and working out. And then I started, there was a time in like one of the substations. So I'm going back a little bit before LA County, where like I was telling people my story and people were like, this sounds like a movie. This is crazy. Like, can't believe what you're going through. And so I had an idea that maybe I would write a book about it, but I wasn't really like super inspired to, I guess, if you will, until those 5 men came up to me and shared what they shared with me. That's when it was like, okay, it's not a maybe. This is like, I'm doing this no matter what. So I would work on my timeline. I like my process of writing this book. So there's a lot of things that I did to like prepare for when I actually started writing. So I'd work on that. And I wasn't a big card game player, so it was more so just maybe like watching Friends. I watched a lot of Friends in there. So shout out Friends. You guys got me through some time. But yeah, working out really. I did a lot of push-ups, a lot of pull-ups every day.
Trying to keep your mind moving,
Yeah.
right? Describe the food. Pretty curious. What's the food like?
I think calling it food would be like an overestimation or like that's being generous. Food was horrible. You could do commissary, but as far as like, you're in the health industry, I'm in the health industry. Like the commissary food is just a bunch of junk food, but it is better than what you're served. You get 3 county meals a day and it's just slop. You look at it and you really don't know what you're eating. They might tell you what you're eating, but you're like, I don't know about that. I did find out that from people that had experience working in the kitchen, that the food comes in boxes that says not for human consumption. And then that's what we're fed. So I have absolutely no idea what we're eating, but it's definitely not good.
What did they tell you it was?
Like if it was supposed to be a steak or whatnot, like,
You tell me.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Like if that's what it was supposed to be, like, I don't know, like any type of meal, they had like a name for it, but like, that's not what it was,
Sure. Well, it's like breakfast. Is it cereal?
Breakfast?
It's a bagel.
Breakfast wasn't too bad. Breakfast was like hard boiled eggs that you had to like crack. They had a couple different options for them. So breakfast was always a sack. So you can get some fruit, hard boiled eggs, cereal, milk, and maybe some bread or like some deli meat, cheese and stuff like that.
And then lunch and dinner, these are like stews? When you describe slop, most people listening probably haven't been there.
Right.
So I'm trying to imagine, what are they feeding you?
They come in trays, so you're supposed to have your veggies and stuff like that. But everything is the way that it has to be cooked, so mass cooked. It just is any type of nutrient that was going to be in that food is out of it. It's basically just water. And so it's, yeah, I mean, that's pretty like, so you had like maybe your green beans or whatever, but they had no taste. And then maybe, you know, another side and the protein or whatnot. So,
Yeah, it's crap.
yeah.
What was it you described earlier? You were a
A
trustee?
trustee.
Trustee, what was your job as a trustee?
In LA County Jail, I worked in the printing shop,
Tell me about it.
but which was awesome because they had too many of us for the actual jobs that needed to be done. So they were totally okay with just you bringing a book and reading. And so some of the people that I befriended in LA County Jail had like all of these novels and massive like 800, 900 page books. And I didn't have any. So they were more than happy to share them with me. And so I just read for like 6 hours. I'd read like 100, 150 pages a day of a book. And I'd finish these like 900 page books in like 5 days. So I did a lot of reading.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a book that is memorable that you read?
I have a notes tab in my phone of all of the books that I've ever read, and then and then a section of like books that I want to read. And I want to say one of them was Blue Horizon, but don't quote me on that. But they were really good. It was like a series, and so this dude had the series of them. So I read like almost all of the series while I was there.
Wow.
And it was cool. You know, I was a huge Harry Potter fan. I read all the Harry Potter books. Like the series of unfortunate events, like Lemony Snicket's. Like I was a big reader growing up, but once I transitioned into like the personal development, self-help, spirituality type books, I fell in love with those, and that's all I read. So it'd been a while since I read a good novel, and man, they really take you to places, like especially when you're in jail. Like it was like watching a movie in my mind, which is really cool. So I would like completely lose track of time. 6 hours would go by and it'd be like, oh, okay. Guess it's time to go back to the dorm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Explain, why'd you get out of LA County? What happens after that?
Yeah. So when I got booked into LA County, it was January, I want to say around January 20th of 2020. So the year of COVID. So when I got in there, COVID was, I remember seeing like, they never put the news on TV, but we got newspapers every day. So like over the weeks, you kind of start seeing headlines about COVID. You call out to, you know, your people out there and they're telling you kind of what's going on. But March was when like COVID started to hit a really big turn. And that's when like lockdowns were happening, things like that. People were being released early from jails because the jail, when you're in jail, like sickness can spread like wildfire in there. You got a lot of people living in close quarters and it's not a very clean place, if you will. We try to keep it as clean as possible. And so at the time, I was supposed to be extradited, or before COVID was getting like really serious. I was supposed to be extradited back to Florida, which was going to be an awful process. I was going to have to drive in a bus and stop at other jails throughout the country, stay the nights there, pick up others, and anyone that was needed to go back to Florida was coming, and we were picking them up and going. And that everyone that I talked to was like, that's like one of the most miserable things that you could possibly do. Just sitting in a bus, hard seats, chained for hours, and then getting off and just going to a new jail for the night. But then COVID came and that kind of changed things. And Florida, or the state of Florida, I guess, state of Florida, allowed me to get released as long as I flew back to Florida on my own dime and put the ankle monitor back on, put the SCRAM monitor back on. Given what had happened, and the main reason why, I don't know if we talked about this, but the main reason that I was in LA County Jail is because of a false positive on the SCRAM monitor, meaning that it said that I drank alcohol, but I did not touch alcohol, and I wasn't putting any substances or any lotions or anything on me that had alcohol. So that was an extremely frustrating scenario. But given that experience, I was like, hey, I've already done 2 months in LA County Jail. I literally asked my mom, I was like, can I do more jail time, be done with this, and like move on with my life? That's where I was. But that wasn't an option, unfortunately. Everything had to be taken care of in Florida because that's where the original charges were done. So I had to move back to Florida, fly home, and put the ankle monitor back on. But leaving Florida was a lot different than California in COVID. I think everybody can attest to that, and or at least saw on the news like what are people doing in Florida versus California. But it was such a strange thing when I got out of LA County Jail. I'd just been in jail for 2 months. It's the longest time I'd ever been in jail. And LA was a ghost town. Like I got out and not a car was on the streets. It was actually a gray, like gloomy day too. It was a really eerie feeling versus like, and you're flying down these highways that you would be sitting in traffic for 2 hours for, because my roommate was there to pick me up. But it was just like and then I flew back to Florida I want to say the next day or maybe the same day. And Florida too. I mean, at that time it was very, very serious, the lockdowns. And it's just such a strange feeling going from being in Florida and then you can't even see anyone. You can't see your friends. I couldn't even see any of my other, like my dad or my brother, because my dad had what's the word for it? I don't want to say an autoimmune. He has psoriasis. So, or like
He's compromised.
Yeah. So he was taking like medication that could make it worse if I had it and he got it. So it was just like, okay, I went from jail to like a lockdown in a house, which, hey, it was a million times better. I'll take that all day. At least I could go outside and go for a walk. But it was weird times for sure.
Wow. So explain what happens from there. How do you wrap up the story with being locked up? You come home to Florida.
Yeah, so I come home to Florida. I go up to Tallahassee. I put the ankle monitor back on. And there's a lot of things that happened with this ankle monitor, like right in the beginning of me putting on. I first off, I live in Orlando. Tallahassee's 4 hours away. So I drive up there and back same day. I get back, and over like the first couple of days of wearing it, my pretrial officer is just like, hey, your monitor's not really working. You know, we're gonna just kind of keep an eye on it over the weekend, and come Monday, like call us and we'll like make sure it's not reading stuff right now. So we just want to make sure that it's working. And so call us Monday and we'll let you know like if it's good. So I call in on Monday. My pretrial officer's not in. Then I talk to some guy who I've never talked to before. And he's like, yeah, like I'm looking at it right now. Like you should be good. Like you should. I'm like, should? Should be good? Like I just spent 62 days in LA County Jail because this thing wasn't working. Like I can't, that's not good enough for me. Like you need to tell me, and you need to put it in writing that I am good. And so I had him do that. And then a few weeks later, it starts acting up again. And they're like, oh, you need to go get it replaced. And I was like, okay. So I went and got it replaced. And then the replaced one started having problems as well. And so I got all of this like documented. And then what do you know? A couple months into me being home, I get a call from an 850 number, which always made my heart stop during that time of my life because that's Tallahassee's area code. Pick it up, pretrial officer. What were you doing at this time? Who are you with? What day? What were you doing on this day? All just drilling me with questions. I'm like, yo, like, why are you guys asking me all this? And I kind of already knew. And they're like, well, your ankle monitor read positive for alcohol on this day. And the funny thing about this system and the equipment that they use is there's like, if it reads alcohol, it's not like it's going to buzz and like tell you, hey, it just read alcohol. Because if that was the case, I would go straight to a clinic and get a blood alcohol test and prove it wrong. They wait 10 days after the supposed time to give you a call and let you know that that happened. And so there's no real way to actually prove it wrong. And so essentially, they were like, okay, well, we're going to take all this information, we're going to send it off to the company, and they're going to deem whether it's environmental or consumed by you. And it came back that it was consumed by me 2 separate times within like a 2-week span, which was not true. After the first time I went to jail, which the first time I went to jail was only for 6 days, I had seen enough of jail. And I told myself, I will literally do anything never to go back to that place. And so I didn't drink. I had that monitor on for probably a total of, between the 2 separate times that I had, over 700 days. And I did not drink a single drop of alcohol in those 700 days. But given that it was COVID, they gave me an order to show cause hearing. And this gave me some time to try and figure out if there's anything out there that I could go get a test done or something to prove this thing wrong, because it was one of the most frustrating things in the world, as you can imagine. And especially when like your freedom is on the line and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And so we found that you can get hair follicle tests done that date back 90 days for alcohol. They're really expensive, but we were like, if we'll spend the money if it can keep me out of jail for something that I didn't do. And we got the test. It came back completely negative. And those 2 times that it tested positive were in that 90 days. It came back completely negative. Unfortunately, because of COVID, this order to show cause just getting pushed back. It got pushed back for almost 9 months, almost all of 2020. So I'm just sitting there waiting. And also at the same time, nothing is happening in my case as well. So finally, we get to the order to show cause hearing. We present my case. We present the findings from the test, and they still found me. And we had all the documentation from the times that my SCRAM monitor was acting up, but they told me to keep it on. So we proved that it was faulty, but they told me not to take it off until finally they did, and then still had problems. And we also had this test saying that that I didn't drink whatsoever, and they still found me guilty, put me back in jail, and they sentenced me to an 1129, which is 11 months and 29 days. It's the longest county sentence that you can have. But that actually didn't happen until a couple months in the jail. So I had to turn myself back to Leon County. So I'm back in Florida, not knowing when I was going to get out. And right before that order to show cause, the state called my lawyer and gave me a plea deal. And we felt really confident about, of course, 15 minutes before the appointment. So my lawyer barely had time to even explain to me what the deal was. And then it was like time to hop on the Zoom. And we just felt really strongly. I mean, that's a decision that you can maybe think on overnight, or you would want to at least. But with the crunch time and what we felt like what we had, we were confident that we were going to prove the SCRAM monitor wrong. And unfortunately, we did not. And I had to go back to jail and for an unknown amount of time. And also now we're thinking like, do we want to fight this case like 3.5 years into this now? But I look really, really, that was a third false positive that this SCRAM monitor had. But in the eyes of the court, it looked like I broke my pretrial 3 times now. And I look horrible. I look like a fuck up, to be lack of better terms. And I look like exactly who they thought I was, but that just wasn't the case. So now we were like, do we even want to go to trial against this? Because they can really paint a really, really negative picture on who I was. It just wasn't true. And then leave that up to a jury. And it's just, in my case, if I was proven guilty in trial, I would have to go to prison for 5 years. Now, I was 21 when this started. and I was 24 at the time going into Leon County Jail. I turned 25 while I was in jail. So I got to spend my birthday, Christmas, Thanksgiving in jail, which is not fun. And then potentially lose this and have another 5 years in prisons. I'm 30 right now, so I'd just be getting out if things went wrong. So, but the scary thing is now is what we thought that we might not have a choice but to go to trial, because that plea deal that they offered us right before the order to show cause, once we found out that I had to turn myself in, our lawyer went back and said, hey, we'll take that plea deal. And they said, there's no deal on the table anymore. And so I went into Leon County Jail, not knowing how long I was going to be there, and if I was going to have to fight a really scary trial, given everything that had taken place in the last 3 years.
So what happens after the 11/29?
So I go into Leon County Jail, and again, I obviously had the experience that I did in LA County under my belt, and I've been in Leon County Jail, which in a way, ignorance is bliss, right? So in the very, very beginning of this whole story, I had to turn myself in, and then I did make the biggest mistake of my life, which led me to wearing the SCRAM monitor and spending 6 days in Leon County Jail. But I thought once I spent 6 days in Leon County Jail, I thought that every jail was like that. So it did give me a little ignorance going into LA County Jail. So I wasn't really as scared as you might think you would be because of that, because Leon County Jail is like a glorified daycare for adults. Unfortunately, that's what I kind of called it, at least. Like, nothing's happening in there. You know, you got your Tallahassee locals and maybe a couple college kids like me, or college kids that get in trouble at a bar or something like that, you know, but it's not like the gang capital of the world. So, but through that time between me getting home from LA County Jail and having to go back, that's where I was just like, again, it was COVID. I had like a 3 or 4 hour morning routine that was just like 3.5 mile walk outside, you know, meditating, reading, practicing gratitude, working out, just like this, and like I was back home with my mom, who's a holistic wellness coach. So I'm taking like 15 different supplements a day. My diet is so locked in. Like, I'm obviously not drinking either because of everything that's going on. So like, I was just in the best state internally, and I'm doing all of these things that literally were making me feel so good, to the point where, it comes from a state of like loving yourself. When you love yourself, you do things that are good for yourself when you truly do. And not to say that we're not perfect, so everyone's going to mess up, but like for the most part, when you really, really love yourself, you're going to make decisions based off of that. And I just got to this point where I was just overflowing with so much love that I was just like, dude, this is and mind you, this is in the middle of everything going on with my false positives, with potentially having to go back to jail, and again, being accused of someone's death that I had no contact with that night. And what was that?
And COVID.
And COVID. And I am just literally the happiest I've almost ever been. I got to the point where I felt like I was overflowing with love. And that's where I was like, holy shit. Like, I want everybody to feel this. Like, I don't have it all figured out. I don't think no one will ever have it all figured out. But I was like, this is it, dude. Like, this feeling that I have internally, and which is also shaping my perspective on everything that I'm going through. Like, this is what it's all about, man. Like, I want everyone to feel like this because this is freaking awesome. And so I just went on this, and that's when I started really, really working on my book. I started writing it, and it became my purpose in life to like finish this book and try to help and inspire as many people as I possibly can to like be the best version of themselves, love themselves, like spread love. Like, I think love is the most powerful thing in the world. And like, you can, with love on your side, like you can do anything. And I just made it my mission to kind of do those things, but from from a stance of like, I'm just going to be the example and and hopefully let it inspire others. And so that's just what my focus is on working on this book and just literally being the best version of myself. And that's all. So that's all I was working on in that gap going into Leon for the last time. And so, based off of my experience at LA County and the impact that I had on people there, and me just knowing to my core, I really believe that like I knew what the truth was. God knew what the truth was. Everybody that knew me or that I cared about, they knew what the truth was. So I really didn't care what other people were thinking about me if they didn't know me. But I was okay with that. I was at peace. I guess that's the best way to put it. I was at peace with everything that was happening in my life. And so when I had to go back, even after proving these things wrong, I knew it wasn't because of what I did or the SCRAM, or like, it's not because I did something that was wrong. I really felt that I was being called to go to a place, a very dark place, and to be a light in a very dark place for other people. And so that was my mentality driving up to Leon County when my mom had to turn me in, was just go be a light. Just go be a light to everybody in there, and everything will work out. Everything will figure itself out, even though you don't know what's going to happen. Like, I had faith and I had a belief that like it was all going to work out for me, and that I was going to be a positive influence for everyone that was around me. And that's just what I did. And so I went into Leon County and hand wrote this entire book, and had some pretty awesome experiences in there as well, like interaction wise with other inmates.
Explain how you hand wrote it.
Okay, so I started the timeline. Well, first off, when I in LA County, when I was like, okay, I might start writing a book, I was like, well, how do I do that? Because I've never written a book. I'm 24 years old. And so I was just thinking like, okay, well, let's just start with making some lists. So I made a list of all the major events that have happened so far. And then I made a list of all of the lessons that I learned throughout this whole process. So a lot of deep reflection to do this. And then once I had both of those lists, I created a timeline. And I started with the events, and then I put all of the lessons where I learned them and after which event. And one of the coolest things that I found from doing this little exercise is, just for the sake of it, I was like, let me put a positive, quote unquote positive, and a quote unquote negative on all of these events. And the craziest thing is that after every single negative, there was a positive that came from it. And it was so eye-opening to me to see like, man, like if you're going through something negative, yeah, it probably sucks, or it might suck, or it might be really difficult, it might be really challenging or uncomfortable. But it just told me, and it allowed me to see that like there will be a positive if you look for it that can come from all negatives. So it's like now anytime like I have this awareness that if I'm going through some season of life or some situation in life that is quote unquote a negative, which I never really see as a negative anyways, but we can call it that for lack of better terms, I know there's going to be a positive to come from it. And that's what keeps me positive through the negative. And that was like just a huge unlock for me.
So you were in Leon County Jail.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How many months total?
Sorry.
Okay.
To go back on that, that was how I started off writing the book. When I got out of LA, I had these with me. I took them home, and then I created a timeline, like, so major events, the lessons, and started to make, almost like mini paragraphs out of all of these. And kind of then I was able to group them into chapters. And then that's when I started writing. I started writing the book before I went to Leon County. And it was funny. I started trying to do this on my iPad and typing it out, and I just couldn't get started, man. I don't know if you can ever relate to this, but it's almost just like, where do I start? It's always the hardest part. but I felt like my brain was moving too fast. So I was just like, I've always been kind of an old school person when it comes to like notes and writing, and it might take longer, but I just enjoy it more. So I literally just started handwriting the whole book at home. I got a notebook, and what it did is it allowed me to slow down so I can actually not have one thought and then miss one because my brain's thinking too fast because I had to write it. So I got about 5 to 6 chapters in before I had to go back to Leon County. And then I wrote the remaining 15, I think 14 or 15 in Leon County. And then I finished like the last 2 chapters when I got out.
Yeah. So just explain, you were sentenced to an 1129
Mm-hmm.
Leon County Jail. They accounted for your time you spent in LA County Jail. What was your remaining time that you spent in Leon?
Yeah. So in order to end up getting that sentence, this whole 3.5 years that had transpired, I never shared my story with the police or detectives or anything like that because that's what I was advised to do. But this was the time now to open up that door to them. And in order for me to get because at this point I talked with my family, and I was at peace with the decision of just pleading guilty, even though I knew I wasn't guilty. Again, like I said earlier, I ran the risks now of another 5 years in prison, and I didn't want to go to prison. That's a whole other ball game. You're dealing with people that are there for life, and that's when like people die in prison because those people have nothing to lose. They're going to be there forever. So it's a way different ball game. I did not want to do that, so I just said, I'm okay with taking a plea. I know what I I know what I did, and I know what I didn't do, and we were trying to get that back on the table. And in order to get that back on the table, I had to give a statement of everything from my perspective that happened that night. And so that was a really difficult time because I had to go back into some memory banks that I would rather not go into. But it worked, and they gave my plea, or they granted me the plea with a 1129, which is 11 months, 29 days. And then, yes, they took into account the 62 days that I spent in LA County Jail. And then I also worked as a trustee in Leon County. I worked in the commissary shop. So I was the one that packaged everybody's like care packages and commissary orders and stuff like that, which was actually like the best job that you could have there because the lady working for it wasn't an officer. She was with a third party company, and she was really cool, and she would like let us eat some of the food on the job, which was like not necessarily allowed. So I got some extra food in there. And then, yeah, so I would get woken up every single day, 5 o'clock, and I would get up, get ready for work. And I served my probation in jail as well. So I didn't have to do anything when I got out, which is you walk on thin ice doing that because there's a lot. I mean, not all cops are bad cops, but there's definitely some cops that abuse their power. And I witnessed firsthand cops try to really stir up the pot with people to try and get them in more trouble. And they try to do it to me sometimes too. And, but luckily, like I had the awareness to not give into it. But if I would have gotten in trouble in jail, it would have like been a violation of my probation, which is just how you just continue the cycle of never getting out of it. But yeah, so that for every day worked, or for every 5 days worked, it was a day off of your sentence. So it ended up being right around 7 months that I was in there.
Long time.
Yeah.
And it was more than just those 7 months you said, because it started years prior, and it just took that long to finally catch up, right?
Mm-hmm.
To finally conclude.
Mm-hmm.
So you get out, you wrote a book. Tell me more about Why Me?
Yeah. So the book is about my story that we've been talking about today. I I would probably put it into two parts. One part was a question and a victim, being a victim. Why me? Like, why is this all happening to me? I couldn't add up. Like, nothing was making sense. I felt like I was always a kind person to other people. I felt like I always tried to do the right thing. And so when I was accused of someone else's death, of being responsible for someone else's death that I wasn't even in contact with, I felt extremely wronged, and it just didn't make sense. Usually you do something and there's a consequence for all of action, or there's you do something, something happens, right? And I just felt like I didn't do anything, and then something crazy, my whole life got flipped completely upside down. And so I was a huge victim for a while. I played the victim for a while, which I feel like we've all been there, right? We've all gone through days where maybe someone cuts you off in traffic or you're late and you're just like, why me? And that's literally what because I was genuinely confused. I couldn't make sense of what was happening in my life because I didn't feel like I did anything to deserve what was going on. And then there was that massive switch internally about halfway through the 4 years where the why me started turning from a why everything was happening to me, that everything was happening for me. And I really do think that it's all a perspective switch. And A Course in Miracles says that a miracle is simply just a shift in perspective. And I really saw that firsthand in my life when I made changes internally, which then changed my perspective on how I viewed things. And the biggest change was really finding and learning about what it means to be present in the present moment in life, and letting go of things and discerning between the things we can and can't control. That was the massive, massive shift in me that allowed me to realize that, hey, if it's not in my control, then it doesn't really deserve that much energy. And now I can just focus on the things I can control, which are way fewer than the things that we can't control. I'd say it's like 98% to 2%, right? Like, we can wake up and we can do our thing, and there can be a million things that happen to us throughout the day that are outside of our control. But what I know that we can control is our attitude and our work ethic and the way that we view things. We have the choice to see things. We have the choice to see the glass half full or half empty. And that, when I made that switch and I surrendered to everything that was out of my control and just said, hey, if it's out of my control, I'm just going to let it play my course. I'm just going to focus on me and what I can control. That's when I started learning all of these lessons from the things that I was going to, and the things that brought me the most pain. And pain can be like literally just the best teacher. It might be the best teacher, in my opinion.
How do you view the glass? Is it better to be half empty or half full?
Full.
So I wrote about it years ago. And I write every week. We've chatted about it, and you've read about some of them. Not every week, but there's times where I want to flip common sayings on a paradigm, right? I want to flip it. So I challenge myself, how could I argue that I want the glass half empty, right? And the way I thought about it, I wrote about this years ago, so just reciting off memory, you could have the perception that when the glass is half full, you didn't choose what filled it. So it could have been filled with those decisions that were out of our control, like we said, the people in LA County that give a tough hand, right? They're dealt a tough hand.
Mm-hmm.
That half full glass could be filled with regret, decisions they would have not made if they could do them today, right? So sometimes what's half full is really tough. So if I looked at it as, if the other half is half empty, I get to pick what to fill it with. So I think, if we spend enough time, if I have a half empty glass, I could actually be optimistic that I could fill it with what I choose to, because I may not have filled the first half.
Yeah.
With all the crap that sinks to the bottom, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at that.
it's tough.
Well, there's still room, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is like a lot of those people, they feel like they're just a product of their environment. And that's just that's just the life that they were given. That's their destiny. But they don't understand that, yeah, it might be half filled with some crap, but there's still opportunity on the other side to like not just fall victim to unfortunate circumstances. It's like, yeah, I know you didn't choose any of this, but there's still a chance. That doesn't mean we just give up completely. Like there's still opportunity. And I really do like that. Like there's still room in that, even though it's empty. It's like your blank canvas now. Like you go create exactly. We're all creators at the end of the day as humans. Like we literally can create another human. So if we can create another human, we can literally take what is in this brain, a thought, and we can manifest it. And that's exactly what I did with this book. That's exactly what you've done with this podcast. And I think it's like just the coolest thing in the world. But like, I feel like a lot of people don't realize that potential that they have within them.
They don't act on it, right? Yeah. They might not know how. They might not know why they don't act on it. You noted you've written lists multiple times in this story, right? I think it's really important. I've written countless and countless lists with this project of, starting this project of like, who do I want to talk to? And I came up with a list. That list has changed 30 times because it's just like, I don't know if they're a fit, they declined, they're not available, they moved away. And like the list keeps changing, but because it's written, I can see it and I can see the evolution. It's hard in your mind if you forgot something or whatever, it holds you accountable. Yeah. So the lists are really important. Another thing I wrote about, similar to the half full, half empty, is I was listening to a song and I literally pulled over in a parking lot, in a Sam's Club parking lot, and I wrote the whole post in like 10 minutes, right off the top of my head. And the lyrics just recited the hand you're dealt, and I referenced that a little bit ago. Typically, when you're told that's a hand you're dealt, typically it's a negative thing, right? Mm-hmm. Normally it's a shitty hand. You think you're dealt, right? So for a long time, I really was frustrated about the hand I was dealt because my whole childhood, I had aspirations of playing college and professional baseball. And I kept getting told, oh, if you're 6'2", if you do this, if this speed, this pop time, blah, 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 I'd be way more competitive to do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm very tall, but I'm not tall enough to play college or professional baseball, right? I'm not 6'2". Yeah. So I would just bash the hand I was dealt as a bad way until I found powerlifting. I was way better at that sport. So then I realized everyone has a winning hand. You might just be playing the wrong game. Yeah. It's another outlook to look at it. Absolutely. So I could just keep playing it for baseball, and eventually I'm going to run dry, right? But if I just played the same exact hand in another sport or education, it could have been the college route, it could have been a job, it could have been a profession, it could have been anything else. I had a winning hand. You might just be playing the wrong game. So it's a really powerful outlook to have. Right?
Yeah, no, I like that. And I feel like I've kind of witnessed that as well. I wanted to be a professional soccer growing up. And I had people along the way, even when I was getting close to that time, tell me like, hey, I've helped people go pro, stay healthy, and I think you could play anywhere in the world at the highest level. And getting told that at 15 is really, really exciting. And then, unfortunately, I couldn't stay healthy. And, three knee surgeries before graduating is a decent amount, but I probably could have still tried. But I think at that point I got a little burnt out. So I think at the end of the day, we have to take extreme ownership on things. And if I'm not a professional soccer player right now, it's because maybe I didn't want it bad enough. Maybe if you want to be like, get really, really real. But maybe I was playing the wrong game. And now I look at where I am now and what I've done and what I feel like my purpose is in life, and that I'm pursuing that and following it. And like, even like profession wise too, like I spun my wheels in a couple careers before the one where I'm at now and worked really hard, but maybe left a little bit on the table because I was playing the wrong game. And now I feel like I'm playing the right game, and it's just like, seems like I can't stop doing well, which is like, it's cool. But I think the underlying theme of like both of our situations is not giving up and like keeping going. And hey, if one thing doesn't work out, that's okay. Like, of course it's gonna suck and it's tough to take, but like there's always, there's never failure. There's always feedback. There's stuff that you can learn from that situation or that period of life that actually that lesson that you learned because you didn't do it there may be setting you up for something bigger. So it's always about just like looking at the glass half full or looking at the empty space that you could fill, because you never know. Like, it's hard. We sometimes have way too narrow of a view of how we want things to go. But really, if our view is this, there's like a whole universe outside of that view of infinite possibilities of what can happen. And if we're too honed in and we're not allowing space or the right mindset to let some of those things come in, then you're gonna miss out on certain things. But I think just like keeping an open mind and an open heart in the midst of like maybe your failures and challenges and adversity is what really allows you to even get those gold nuggets that I talked about earlier, take them and then maybe use them, and they're setting you something up for so much bigger than what you maybe could even imagine.
Perseverance is a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
You choose to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to just roll over. Right?
Fold the hand.
Right.
It was dealt.
Yeah, tap out.
Yeah.
Right.
Or we can just go all in and see what can happen.
At least try.
Right.
Right. So I saved the beginning of the story for the end.
Okay.
And could you just recall how the story began in your eyes? Why me? Why did all this stuff happen?
Yeah, so I was on the executive board of my fraternity, and I was about a week away from passing the torch to the next guy in line, and we had our big brother night. And I took a little brother a little bit later than I was supposed to, but I was under, my mentality was I want the right one for me. I don't want to just choose a little brother, because it meant something to me. I had a really good big brother. And for those of you that aren't in Greek life, you have families within Greek life, and they're kind of supposed to be like an extra level of support, friendship. Some have really close families in the fraternity, some don't. I had a really great big brother, and his big brother was great. So I wanted to keep that line going. So I waited a little bit more to get my little brother, but it was the end of their pledgeship, and we had, at the end of the big brother ritual, we have a big party to throw for them. It's brothers only, and the whole idea of it is because they don't know this, but they're about a week away from becoming brothers. So if you made it this far, you'd have to do something major to screw that up and not get in, but you're pretty much in at that point. So there's no rules for the pledges at this party. You're seen as an equal, and we're going to celebrate that. However, a lot of my friends, like my close friends in the fraternity, had already taken their big brothers. So it was a Thursday night, and we're rewinding. I talk about it now and you're just like, this is so dumb. But when you're in college, it's the way you think. But it was a Thursday night, and I didn't want to be at that party. I'd rather be out with all the other friends. And also my little brother was close to my close friends too. And so we were both on the same page. We're like, maybe we'll go for a little bit, and then we're just going to leave and go out, do a normal night. And so that's what we did. We showed up, we stayed for an hour, and then we left. And the next morning, one of my best friends stormed into I lived at the house. So on a Friday morning, I was kind of used to people just like barging in and being like, yeah, it's Friday, let's go, And he comes in and he tells me that one of our pledges passed away. And I couldn't really believe it. It was a little surreal. And I thought maybe he was a kind of a jokester. So I was like, maybe he's just like doing some type of sick joke. So I got up and I went around the fraternity house, and the place was just in a state of chaos. Like all the brothers were there. most brothers I've ever seen at that house ever. People were on the phones, people were like calling people, and it was very chaotic. And so I was like, okay, wow, like this is real. So he he tragically passed away from drinking too much alcohol at that party. Now, I can't say what happened or what took place because I wasn't there. And all I do know is that our fraternity was known to not haze with alcohol. As someone that was in leadership on the fraternity or in the fraternity, we specifically told our pledges that if any brother ever tried to make them do something that they were not comfortable with, especially when it comes to alcohol, you come to us directly and we'll take care of that. And I pledged too. I actually pledged dry when I was a pledge, meaning I told them I wasn't going to drink and they were totally okay with that. They were supportive of that. And so, but again, I whether regardless of any of that information, I wasn't there when pretty much the whole night, and I didn't come into contact or talk to him at all that night. And that led to an investigation. And then they ended up putting the blame on the leadership for creating an environment where hazing could happen. And yeah, so that's it. It's extremely, extremely tragic. And I wasn't close with our pledges at all. My position on the executive board had very little interaction with the pledges. My focus was the brothers. So, I mean, hindsight 2020, I wish I maybe could have been a better influence to our pledges and maybe things would be different. But, you can't think about that too much because what happened and that's in the past. And the best thing you can do is move on and learn from everything, which is exactly what I tried to do. But yeah, so, and then that led to the 3rd-degree felony charge for being hazing. And then shortly after that, I was kicked out of school or suspended indefinitely pending the results of the case. And really the biggest thing was the pretrial restrictions that were put on us after we were officially charged was no alcohol. And we were subject to one random breathalyzer test a week. And so after I got kicked off of school and I had these pretrial restrictions, we thought it was best just to move home. There's nothing for me in Tallahassee. I didn't have a job up there. I was kicked out of school. It's obviously a very massive party school. When I was going there, it was rated #1 party school in the country. And that was like coming off of our national championship in 2013. So it was a really fun place to be, but it's just like, I don't know, everything is in moderation and, you never think something bad will happen to you. But that's just not the reality. And, but yeah, so we just felt like that was not a place that I needed to be up there with no school or no job. So I moved home and that's when my depression really started to set in. Felt like I was being wronged. It felt horrible to feel like people thought that I was the responsible for someone dying. And I was, kind of missing out on my senior year of school and just seeing everything happening while sitting at home. And so that's when the depression started to set in really bad. And I started to get my decision-making started to get a little bit clouded. And I went up to Tallahassee and made the biggest mistake of my life, which altered literally the trajectory, the whole trajectory of my life. Was making that one big mistake. But if I never made that mistake, I would never have the book that I wrote.
Do you want to share that mistake?
Yeah. So this is the biggest mistake that I've ever made in my life. The chapter is called The Biggest Mistake of My Life. And being in a fraternity, like I liked to enjoy myself. I enjoyed partying, the tailgates, everything. And so that was a big part of my life, especially in Greek life and in most schools too. And being home for a few months, you start to kind of learn the ins and outs of, the breathalyzer test. You're getting a random breathalyzer test once a week, and you got to wake up every morning. You call a certain hotline. If they say the first letter of your last name, that means you have to go get a breathalyzer test and then send it in to Tallahassee before the end of the day. And then that you're not going to get called until at least next Sunday. So there's a little wiggle room to break the pretrial and not get caught if you really wanted to. And for the first few months, I just did what I was supposed to do. And then it started to kind of drag on. And at this rate, in the beginning, my lawyer told me that this would last 6 to 12 months tops. It lasted 4 years. So I was thinking that this wasn't going to last that long and I was going to go back to my life pretty quickly. I also had no idea. I felt so wronged and just felt so innocent that I don't think I realized the severity of the situation in the beginning. And so, you started to realize like, okay, if I get called on a Tuesday, I go pass, I'm not going to get called until Sunday. I could probably get away with drinking in that period and, be fine. And so when I started to kind of figure that out, I started thinking about maybe going up to Tallahassee for like one last weekend with all of my buddies. People were getting ready to graduate. They were going to be moving to different parts of the country. So these are my best friends that I might not see for a long time anymore. And I had a really, really tight knit group up there. And so I planned like one last weekend with them. And when I went up there, I was obviously drinking and partaking in the partying. And long story short, I got caught. My buddy was about to get into a fight, getting into a club with the bouncer. And I knew I knew that like who my best friend was at the time. And the way things were heading, I was like, this is going to turn into a fist fight. And they started getting closing in on each other, even though the whole time I know that I'm not supposed to be here. So I'm just trying to get his attention and be like, hey man, let's just go away. Let's leave. I'm not supposed to be here. And he's not listening. And then eventually when they closed in, I was like, oh, it's about to turn into a fight. So I go to get in between them to separate them. And the security guard watching, I guess, thinks that I tried to start a fight. And so we get absolutely decked by some massive security guards. I hit the pavement so hard that I kind of blacked out. And next thing you know, I wake up, I'm on my stomach and I'm in handcuffs. And they ended up finding out who I was and revoked my bond. And that's when I went to jail for those 6 days. And luckily, I was supposed to go to jail until the remainder of the case was over. But my lawyer was able to get me out with that SCRAM monitor. And that was my second chance, if you will. And now that we've talked about everything we talked about, you could probably see how crazy that was, because that SCRAM monitor had 3 false positives after that. And I would have never gone to LA County Jail. I would have never, if it wasn't for that mistake, again, there's probably never a book.
Could you imagine your life looking back if this series of events did not happen? Is there any way to comprehend where the hell you would be now?
It's really hard. It's almost impossible, especially with the way that I handled it, and all the things that I don't even, minus someone's life having to be lost, I wouldn't change anything about this because of who I am as a person today and what I'm trying to do for, I feel like, not only myself, but the betterment of society and the human race. All I want to do is help make this place a better place that we live in while my time's here. and inspire more love in the world. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really, really tragic that it had to happen, or it happened the way that it did, and as a result of that. But I can't imagine, like, with what I feel like is my purpose, and I feel like I'm living out my purpose right now, then I can't imagine life being any different than it is now.
Where can people find your book, Why Me?
My book is on Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
Cool. Barnes and Noble too.
Yeah.
So they can order online.
Website. Yeah.
Yep. Very, very cool.
Yes,
very,
sir.
very neat. So your book includes everything we chatted about and way more,
Yeah.
right? Way more description.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've noted, the goal is to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And love has been the underlying message that you've conveyed. People could always use more of it, right? And some people just haven't experienced it. And that's what kind of leads to difficult decisions that they end up making, right?
Yeah.
Pretty tough. Do you think you would have learned this gift of love any other way? Or do you think it took going in and out of jail and this long, crazy story for you to learn that?
I think I always had love in my heart just because of the incredible life that I lived growing up. I've received so much love from my parents. So, but it was more so the discovery of self-love, and like really learning how to like truly, truly love yourself. That was like the ultimate difference maker, I would say, because when I was depressed and battling anxiety, and I made a lot of bad decisions that I talk about in the book. I'm not shy about them at all, as far in regards to like going out, utilizing drugs and other things like that. I wasn't drinking, but I was doing other things, and it's just not stuff you really do. And I feel like you love yourself fully. You don't. It's a lot easier to say no to those things when you love yourself. And I was definitely trying to fill a void and escape my present moment. I was so resistant. I suffered so much for so long because I resisted my present moment. I either wanted to be in the past when things were better, or I wanted to be in the future where things were hopefully better than what I was going through now. And that just caused so much suffering, because all we have is right now. That's gone, and that doesn't exist. That's just all stuff made up in our mind of what could potentially happen. But really, the only thing that's real is the present moment. And love fills the void that you want to look for out. If you're searching for things externally to fill you up, to fill your cup, you're going to be searching forever, and they're fleeting. But this is eternal. This is infinite. This is whenever you want it, it's there. If you're religious, like one of the best things that I ever read in A Return to Love, it's a teaching on A Course in Miracles. It's a great book, but one of the most profound things that I remember from that book is a 3-word sentence: God is love. So if you're not religious, or if you're not a Christian, I mean, you can go to the Bible. I've actually tried this, and like replace the word God with love, and it flows and it fits. And so if you're not super religious or whatnot, like, I mean, you could call it God, you can call it love, but I think they're one of the same. But that's going to fill everything that you're looking for. And at least that's what I found in my life. And if you're not happy right now, if you're not happy right now, if you're going through really tough times and things aren't going your way, like, stop looking outside for the answers. Look within. That's where all the answers are. And that's what I found in my life. And that's when everything changed for me.
And experience love.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't tell you, you may have seen other episodes. I give everyone a gift. You may have seen that before.
Oh.
I write all of my notes. We've talked about handwriting a lot. I write everything in field notes. They're a brand I really want to support. They're made in the US. I like the texture. You may have noted in our conversation today, you wrote your book primarily with like a couple-inch pencil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just like whatever notepad you could find in jail.
Yeah.
Pretty different. So I hope you like field notes.
Oh, that's good.
Everyone gets their own.
Hey.
These are fun. they fit in your pocket. And,
Amazing.
yeah, it's different. I joke that there's no battery, so just don't get it wet and don't set on fire, and it should last a pretty long time.
That's awesome. I
Of
really appreciate that.
course, we
Thank
talked
you.
about how handwriting slows you down.
Mhm.
And there's a reason I handwrite my notes. I could easily talk into a phone or a tablet and have this whole thing kind of like transcribe what I'm doing. Um, but it's different. If I take the time to write stuff down, I really sit with my thoughts and I can better understand who I'm talking to, what we're talking about, and be present in the moment, right?
Yeah.
You noted listening and how important it is. If this project's taught me anything, it's how to listen.
Yeah.
I try not to be the one talking most of the episodes, right? I
Yeah,
wanna be
you
listened
do, you
to.
do a great job.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, it's hard to compare your story to anyone else's. But if you want more wild stories, I interviewed Tony Doc Dog Baker, legendary tattoo artist, the first tattoo artist from Las Vegas, Nevada. And he shares some wild stories as well. Pretty different. He describes his incarceration at the age of 13.
Wow.
Pretty nuts. Father passed away at the age of 2. He ended up homeless. And yeah, he actually found at a young age, he did things to stay incarcerated because it's not like he had a loving home to go home to,
I've heard that before.
right?
Yep.
So he actually made those decisions.
Yeah.
And once he got out as an adult, his life really changed. He shared some wild stories, but he didn't spend much time incarcerated after that, right?
Mhm.
So check that out. If you made it this far to the end of the episode, the biggest way you could help me is subscribing and sharing online, leaving a review on Amazon or Amazon maybe, but Spotify and Apple. That's the biggest help to help me make more of these episodes. That's the biggest help. Share the story. Check out the book Why Me on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and be in tune to listen to Clay. I hope you pursue keynote speaking, more public speaking, more events to help share your story,
Thank you.
especially to the youth. I say youth, high school is important, but that college age, you're old enough to make heavy decisions, but
Yep.
you're still pretty young, right?
Yeah.
So I hope more people will hear your story.
Thank you.
Right? Of course.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Final question is my dad's greatest advice to me. I've told you this beforehand. Growing up, my dad would always tell me to never waste a mistake. And as a young kid, a lot of kids don't listen to their parents, right? For one reason or another. I'm glad that I did. And my dad would always say to never waste a mistake. So I describe each episode. It's not just my own mistakes. I was learning from my dad, from my baseball coaches, from any other person that I can learn from. Because if they made the mistake and they've learned from it, why should I repeat it if I could just be open-minded and listen, right?
Yeah.
And I want to provide one surefire way every episode. If there's anything to take away, it's the last 2 minutes. So the final question for every guest is, what is one mistake you have not wasted?
I would say the one mistake I've not wasted was going up to Tallahassee and breaking my pretrial restrictions. You know, there was just a chain of events that happened from that. And one thing I left out about that story is that my mom called me on the way up there just to check in. I was living with my dad at the time, and my dad was out of town. And so he had no idea that I was going up to Tallahassee that weekend. But my mom called me. She's like, "What you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going up to Tallahassee." And woo, was she not for that? And she was begging me to not go. And I just told her, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. I'm doing this. And then she's like, "Well, tell your lawyer." And then I told my lawyer, and he was like, "You shouldn't be doing that. But whatever you do, don't get in trouble and don't drink." I did both of those. So you can imagine how awful that call was to my mom, letting her know what happened. But that was the biggest mistake of my life. You know, I think when you look at it, if I don't make that mistake, then I don't go to jail. I don't get the SCRAM monitor back on. If I don't have the SCRAM monitor on, there's no room for false positives. I probably don't move out to California. And if I don't move out to California and wearing a SCRAM monitor, I never end up in LA County Jail. If I never end up in LA County Jail, I never meet the people that I met. I never shift the perspective that I go through. And if that never happens, then there's never an inspiration for this book. And so I dedicated 6 years of my life to working on this book and getting it published, and I would say that I didn't waste that mistake by, going from getting kicked out of college and spending, going to jail 4 different times to being a published author and wanting to just help as many people as I possibly can in the world. So that would be the one mistake that I feel like I didn't waste.
I hope more people will learn from it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. Clay.
All right.
Do this again.
Let's do it.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.